every single day. You basically hand over the keys to your entire digital life, and you do it because of this microscopic string of text that you probably don't even realize you're reading.
Right. Yeah, we just breeze right past it.
Exactly. You look at a screen, your brain processes a tiny prompt, and like without a second thought, you just trade your anonymity for access. We totally ignore the architecture that defines how we exist online.
It's really the ultimate invisible infrastructure. We are so conditioned to just click through that we completely ignore the massive complex systems operating, just beneath the surface of that click.
Yeah, and that is exactly what we are going to unpack in today's deep dive. We're going to look at that surface to understand the depths.
It's a fun one.
It is, because today's source material is highly unusual. It is exceptionally brief. I mean, it's not a white paper, it's not some dense architectural schematic. It is literally just a handful of words.
Just 6 words, actually.
Right. But those 6 words are basically a masterclass in how modern technology platforms are built, how they track you, and, well, how they lock you in.
It's really a perfect case study in reading the digital environment.
Yeah.
Because when you don't have paragraphs of text to rely on, every single letter, every space, and even every missing space becomes a structural clue.
Yeah, so let me explicitly lay out the entirety of our provided source material for this deep dive. Here it is, verbatim. Excerpts from Google Gemini : in Google Apps.
Wow.
Right, that's it. Those are the words.
It's just so jarring to isolate it like that, isn't it? Like completely stripped away from the sleek interface and the glowing screen.
It really is. When I first looked at this text in isolation, I had this image of driving through a vast, completely empty desert, just endless sand.
Yeah, I like this.
And suddenly, right in the middle of nowhere, there's just this single isolated toll booth. Like there is no city around it, no highway, just a brand name hovering above the booth and a stern command to stop and enter your credentials.
Yeah.
You're just standing there looking at this booth, wondering what exactly you are paying to access and why this toll booth is even here in the first place.
That's a great way to visualize it, because this sparse little string of text, it represents the universal digital threshold. It establishes the absolute foundational first step of modern user interaction.
The very first step.
Exactly. Before you can use a tool or ask a question or, generate a single line of code, you encounter a boundary wall. This text is the boundary. What's fascinating here is that it is the corporate ecosystem asserting its presence before it allows any utility to happen.
Right. It's the door before the room. And before we even look at the mechanism of the lock on that door, I kind of want to look at the nameplate, like the label placed on this fragment.
The very beginning of the text.
Yes, the source begins with excerpts from Google Gemini.
Yeah, that opening word is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Excerpts.
How so?
Well, the moment you see that, you are being explicitly told you are dealing with a curated, incomplete picture. It implies a much larger, unseen entity, Google Gemini. And this tiny slice was deliberately extracted for your viewing. It's the platform basically acknowledging its own massive scale.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit, because I kind of have to push back on this.
Okay, go for it.
Are we maybe making a mountain out of a molehill here? Like, if I see the word excerpt, my first thought isn't some profound admission of scale. My first thought is that it's just, standard, lazy UI boilerplate.
Right, just generic text.
Yeah. Aren't we just reading too much into a generic label? I mean, what is the actual value of looking at a single fragment out of its full context? If we only had an excerpt, aren't we just operating in the dark?
A completely fair question, but you have to think about why that boilerplate exists in the first place. Think about the technical reality of what Google Gemini actually is.
Yeah.
It is a large language model trained on billions, possibly trillions of parameters. It requires massive server farms and incomprehensible amounts of compute power just to function.
Yeah.
The human mind literally cannot visualize the actual architecture of that system.
It's too abstract.
Exactly. So designers have to create these extreme distillations. Every day you interact with these massive digital infrastructures, but you only ever see the absolute surface layer, the excerpts.
So you're saying this simplification is a technical necessity, not just a casual design choice.
Right. You can't expose a regular user to the raw API endpoints or the neural network weights. It would be entirely useless. So they build a tiny, heavily curated window.
I see.
The excerpt isn't just a random piece of the system. It is the specific, engineered lens through which the system chooses to be seen by you. It's an interface designed to translate machine complexity into human simplicity.
So they give you a clean steering wheel because if you saw the schematic of the actual engine, you wouldn't even know how to drive the car.
Precisely. And understanding that everything you interact with is a highly engineered excerpt changes how you view your digital environment.
Mm.
You realize you are always operating in a managed space.
Which brings us directly to how that space is managed, because we know we're looking at a fragment of this massive entity. But the very first action that fragment demands of you the very first verb we hit in the text is sign in.
The digital gatekeeper itself.
Yes. We've moved from the nameplate on the door to the actual lock mechanism. And here's where it gets really interesting to me. I love thinking about the psychology of that specific prompt.
Oh, absolutely.
Because when you see a sign-in button, is it more like a welcoming concierge at a high-end hotel, or is it more like a strict bouncer at an exclusive nightclub? There's a real tension there.
Yeah, that dual nature is exactly what makes authentication so fascinating. On one hand, it's totally pitched as a concierge. Please identify yourself so we can fit your preferences, your search history, your personalized settings.
Right. Let us tailor this room exactly to your liking. It promises convenience.
But structurally, on the back end, it acts as the bouncer. If we connect this to the bigger picture, a sign-in prompt is never neutral. It is a profound boundary wall.
It separates everything.
Exactly. It signals the exact physical point in the code where the public, anonymous internet ends and the private, authenticated internet begins. The system is essentially saying, I don't know you, and until you prove who you aren't getting past this line.
So the primary job of that gate isn't actually to welcome you at all.
No, it's to protect the ecosystem inside and establish a persistent tracking mechanism.
Let's get into the mechanics of that tracking, actually, because this is where the how really matters. We click sign in 20 times a day, but what is technically happening when we cross that boundary? We aren't just showing a driver's license to a human who nods and lets us in.
Right. Under the hood, modern authentication usually runs on protocols like OAuth or similar token-based systems. When you provide your credentials, the system verifies your identity and then generates a secure token.
Okay, and what does that token do?
Think of it as basically a temporary encrypted digital wristband.
Oh, I like that. So instead of having to prove who I am at every single individual door inside the building, the front desk just gives me a wristband that all the internal doors automatically recognize.
Exactly. That token travels with you as you move through the application.
Yeah.
But here is why that matters. That token doesn't just grant access. It acts as a persistent beacon.
Meaning everything is recorded.
Yes. Everything you do, every prompt you type into Gemini, every file you open, is now irrevocably tied back to that specific wristband. The transaction you make at the sign-in screen is trading your digital invisibility for utility. You are officially agreeing to be known and logged.
And it's wild to think about because historically we didn't always do this for every single thing on the internet. I mean, there used to be a time when you could just visit a web page, use a tool, and leave without ever establishing an identity.
True. The early web was much, much more anonymous. But the business model of the internet shifted over time. Data became the primary currency. And to collect high-quality data, well, you need persistent identity.
So the tool becomes the bait.
Yeah, the sign-in became mandatory because anonymous usage doesn't build a behavioral profile. The tool, in this case, an advanced AI like Gemini, is deemed valuable enough that the platform knows you will gladly surrender that anonymity just to access it.
We just toss our privacy coins right in the toll booth basket and keep driving because we want the shiny new AI tool.
We do it reflexively. We don't even think about it.
But that reflex leads us into the final and, frankly, the most revealing piece of this tiny source text, because this specific toll booth has a really bizarre architectural quirk.
It really does.
We've established the barrier of the sign-in, but when we look at exactly what is physically attached to that barrier in the text, things get really messy.
The typography itself tells a story here.
Right. Let's look at the literal formatting. It doesn't say sign in on one line and then, Google Apps nicely formatted in a corner. The text is literally sign in Google Apps.
Yeah. There is no space between in and Google.
None. It's a complete physical collision of the action sign in and the ecosystem Google Apps. Now, so what does this all mean? because I have to be the skeptic here again.
I expect nothing less.
When I first read this, my immediate thought was, this is just a typo. Like this is a tired developer pushing a minor update on a Friday afternoon and just forgetting to hit the spacebar. Why are we treating a simple glitch in the matrix as some definitive piece of platform architecture?
Look, it is entirely possible it's just a technical glitch. But even if it's a typo, the nature of the typo is incredibly revealing about how the software is actually built.
Okay, walk me through that.
Let's look at how user interfaces are actually coded on the back end. Strings of text on a screen are often not written out as one long static sentence. They are dynamically generated through a process called string concatenation.
Okay, string concatenation. Break that down for us. What does that actually mean in this context?
It basically means the code is pulling different variables together on the fly to build the sentence you see. So you have one variable that handles the authentication status, which outputs sign in.
Right.
And you have another completely separate variable that defines the environment, which is Google Apps. The software stitches them together in real time.
No.
If the developer doesn't explicitly program a space character between those two distinct variables, they just crash right into each other.
Ah, okay. So the missing space actually proves that these are two separate back-end concepts being forcibly jammed together on the front end.
Exactly. It visually exposes the seams of the software. But more importantly, let's look at what is being jammed together. The prompt is nominally attached to an excerpt of Gemini, but it doesn't say sign in to Gemini. It says sign in Google Apps.
And that completely changes the nature of the destination. It totally blows up my toll booth in the desert analogy from earlier.
So it really does.
Because we aren't standing in an empty landscape looking at a lone gate for Gemini, the fact that authentication is instantly fused to Google Apps implies that Gemini isn't a standalone destination at all.
No, it is not an isolated island. It is fundamentally tethered to the mainland.
It's more like, instead of a toll booth, you walk up to a shiny new door labeled Gemini, but the moment you turn the key, you realize that door isn't attached to a new building. It's just a new room that was added onto a massive corporate skyscraper you already live in.
Yes.
And the master key they hand you in the lobby tracks you on every single floor of that skyscraper.
That is a much more accurate analogy. Once you pass that sign-in bouncer, the token we talked about earlier isn't just valid for the Gemini room. Your identity is instantaneously broadcast to Docs, to Drive, to Gmail, to Calendar.
A whole suite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The collision of the words in Google is a literal representation of a unified back-end database. The authentication isn't local, it is universal.
So why design it this way? I mean, why not let Gemini be its own thing with its own separate login? What is the actual business strategy behind instantly dropping the user into the entire Google Apps universe?
It's all about ecosystem lock-in and platform monopoly. In the tech industry, this is known as platform as a service, or Paris architecture.
Okay.
If you launch a new tool as a standalone product, it has to fight for survival purely on its own merits. Users can easily try it, get bored, and just switch to a competitor.
Because there's no friction.
Right. But if you deeply integrate that new tool into the ecosystem where people already do their daily work, where they write their emails, store their photos, schedule their meetings, the switching costs become incredibly high.
Because to leave the AI tool, you'd essentially have to pack up and move out of your entire digital house.
Precisely. By fusing the action with a broader brand name, the text subtly reinforces where the true value lies. The gravity isn't just in the AI itself. The gravity is that the AI has direct, immediate access to your existing files in Drive and your emails in Gmail.
So the user justifies it.
Yeah, the friction of having to sign in is justified to the user because they realize they're unlocking their entire digital life, not just a single chat box.
This is a classic tech strategy, right? Like, it reminds me of the 90s when Microsoft bundled Internet Explorer with the Windows operating system. You didn't just get an OS.
You got the browser permanently tied to it.
Right, which basically decimated the competition at the time because the integration was already there. You didn't have to seek it out.
It's the exact same playbook, just updated for the AI era. You use a monopoly or a massive footprint in one area like enterprise productivity apps to force adoption in a new, highly competitive area like generative AI.
You don't even have to convince someone to download a new app.
No, you just put a shiny new button inside the software they are already mandated to use for work every single day.
And the UI completely reflects that reality. The missing space in Sign in Google Apps is almost poetic when you think about it. It's the visual equivalent of the company saying, there is zero distance between our new tool and our old empire. It is all one monolithic structure.
It really forces you to realize that in the modern digital landscape, you are almost never interacting with a single standalone product anymore. You are interacting with nodes on a massive interconnected corporate network. The entry point to any single node immediately plunges you into the entire web.
It really makes you rethink what you're consenting to when you just click that button. You think you're just trying out a fun new toy, but the text is explicitly telling you that you are negotiating a relationship with an entire ecosystem.
And this is exactly why analyzing even a tiny fragment of text is so valuable. I mean, we went from 6 seemingly mundane words to mapping out the core business model of the modern web.
It's incredible. Let's summarize this journey, actually, because it's fascinating how much architecture is hidden in plain sight. We started by looking at a microscopic digital artifact, a string of text so small you usually wouldn't even register reading it.
But by slowing down and really unpacking it, we saw the blueprint of the whole factory inside a single brick.
We did. We found a named entity, Google Gemini, that openly admits it's only showing you an excerpt of its true scale, translating immense machine complexity into a curated, digestible human interface.
Right.
We explored how that entity is guarded by a sign-in checkpoint, acting as a bouncer that trades your anonymity for a persistent tracking token. And finally, through a literal typographic collision, we saw how that checkpoint seamlessly integrates you into a massive, inescapable ecosystem of Google apps, permanently locking you into the platform.
This raises an important question, though. It really makes you step back and observe your own digital habits. We are so completely accustomed to these mandatory gateways. The user experience is designed to be so smooth and frictionless that we become entirely blind to the walls of the garden we are walking into. We just see the convenience and totally forget the trade-off.
We don't see the toll booth, we don't see the bouncer, we just see the open road ahead. But that road is privately owned, and the gates are heavily monitored. And that leaves me with one final thought, actually. Something for you to mull over as you go about your day and inevitably encounter one of these gateways yourself.
They're everywhere.
They really are. We talked extensively today about that strange fusion sign in Google Apps and how the gateway to a revolutionary new tool is actually just a back door into the old, familiar ecosystem.
A welded joint connecting the new to the old.
Right. So think about this. If our entire ability to access supposedly new frontiers of technology is strictly governed by logging into massive pre-existing ecosystems, do we ever actually get to experience a truly new internet? Or are we just endlessly rearranging the furniture inside the exact same walled city? Next time you click sign in, take a second to ask yourself, are you really opening a new door, or are you just turning the master key to the same old house?